Yeah, I think that presence and absence is a nice way to frame the issues that are at stake with Buddha nature broadly, and typically how Buddha nature can be framed as some type of presence or ground, real or not, but leaning more on the side of like an appearance or clarity, luminosity, and then absence, of course, emptiness. And what I found in my work with Mipam is that he structures this dialectic between presence and absence in a way that there's a good presence and there's a bad presence, and or maybe let's say a reified presence that is something that you don't want, but there's also a good presence, and there's maybe you could say a reified absence or metaphysics of absence, what I call it, in contrast to this metaphysics of presence or this real presence, a kind of a conceptual absence or a negation that you also get as in the Madhyamaka and thinking about emptiness and analyzing the world and debating. But there's a kind of a partial absence and then a full absence, which is not even an absence. It's an absence that undermines itself. It's inconceivable. And so this type of inconceivable absence and this inconceivable presence that's not this real solid ground, nor is the absence a real negation, but this type of the inconceivability of presence and absence kind of comes together. He wedged those together in this notion of Buddha nature, or the way he talks about Buddha nature. And that way he's able to bring together the second turning, Prajnaparamita Sutras, and the third turning, and the Tathagata Sutras, as well as he brings together Yogacara and Madhyamaka, and also self-emptiness and other emptiness, or Rongdong Shindong. So I thought that was a way to think about the material, think about the issues, and put it in a language that resonates more with broader conversations around humanity, and try to connect it with just broader philosophical questions.
Do you think this debate has been going on since the beginning of Buddhism? I mean, the sort of the difference between nirvana and enlightenment, right? It seems like, the sort of sense that at the very beginning, even people were the Buddhist disciples were talking about whether there's a self or isn't a self, and in what capacity there would be a self if there is a self. And it seems like it's almost too simple to say the Buddha taught there was no self and that was that, right? I mean, from the very beginning, people were asking the question about presence and absence. Do you look at that sort of material? I mean, how do you see the Tibetan, the early 20th century Tibetan conversation about this in Buddhist history?
Yeah, I think looking back at the Buddhist history and just the India in the 5th century BCE, like in the Upanishads as well, not even limited to Buddhism, about speculating about the nature of the self, or it's not this, it's not that, neti, and the Buddha also in this kind of cultural milieu, and thinking about what is and who am I, and not just limited to India, to in Greece as well, know thyself. So I think this time period was really fertile, and what's distinctive about the Buddha is this contrast of the Atman. I mean, I think it's probably not as simple. I think there's this distinction of the Buddha saying Anatman and the Hindus saying Atman, I think, or even in the Upanishads having a clear notion of Atman. I think there's this dialogical relationship in the Buddhist tradition in conversation with other renunciant traditions in India, and yogic traditions, speculative philosophical traditions. So I think this question is been going on from since the ancient world, and has taken on different iterations throughout India, and the relationship between, the nature of, mind. Is it pure? Is it impure? What's the relationship between samsara and nirvana? Can you have emptiness without a ground of emptiness? Can you have something that's unreal without something real? These questions, I think, have occupied the minds of people throughout history, and the Buddhist tradition is really engaged with that deeply. And in Tibet, as well, the Buddha nature and the relationship with emptiness, right? This presence and absence has also, been one of the main issues that people have, been arguing about, thinking about, contemplating on. And in a way, I see it is this unresolution is actually part of really what's important about this conversation, because it's neither presence nor absence, and I think it's that synergy within and between these two polarities where it is most interesting. So I think there's a tendency of thought to want to settle on one or the other. It's easy to just think, oh, it's a real thing. Buddha nature is a real thing, or emptiness is some type of absence of intrinsic existence, and think that you've kind of quantified it and determined it. And, but I think that's why I was afraid of the question of wanting to define the Buddha nature, because it's bigger than definitions. So anyway, I think it's just something it's animated conversations on the nature of mind, the nature of reality and human nature throughout history.